My managers and agents read it, and they're like, "Oh, this is you. Dark hair, big eyebrows, and mild cerebral palsy." I'm like,
You might as well put your name on the page. I mean, it's perfect.
And they did.
It's episode 208 of the Cassius Morris Show. Thanks for tuning in to this brand new edition of the podcast. Very few television shows can be ranked at the same level as Breaking Bad. With an astonishing 110 award winnings and 262 nominations, Breaking Bad is widely hailed as not only one of the greatest television shows to ever air, but potentially one of the greatest cinematic feats ever produced.
You're goddamn right.
One of the most unique characters on Breaking Bad came in the form of RJ Mitte, an actor who got his start in smaller roles in programs such as Hannah Montana. In Breaking Bad, RJ portrays the innocent Walter Jr., son of meth kingpin Walt Sr., aka Heisenberg.
Dad, it's okay. Hey, it's okay.
The character Walter Jr. is afflicted by cerebral palsy, also known as CP, a muscular disorder, which the actor is actually afflicted with in real life. However, he's not afflicted with it in the same way as his character, which is something that we delve into in this interview. We also talk about how CP has affected RJ's day-to-day life, how it affects him working up to 16 hours a day on film and television sets, and of course, everything you want to know about his time on Breaking Bad. I sincerely hope you guys enjoy this episode with RJ. It was a lot of fun. If you do like this episode, please hit that subscribe button wherever you're tuning in, be it YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher Radio. Hit that subscribe button and leave a comment or review. I definitely want to know what you think of the content that I'm putting out. And also leave a comment telling me who you want to see on the podcast next. And without further ado, let's get into my exclusive podcast with actor RJ Mitte. RJ, how you doing?
I'm doing very well. Never a dull moment.
That's it. Hey, it's great to hear from you, man. Thanks for doing this.
Oh, my pleasure.
Appreciate it, dude. What are you doing right now? You're out in Texas?
I'm in Texas, working on a community development project with my family foundation right now. Just been meetings. I have a couple of new projects I'm working on. Couple of film projects, but actually a couple of different type of renewable energy, clean and safety stuff.
Wow.
While I was here, I started an initiative this past summer called A New Standard of Clean.
Nice.
Working with Texas A&M's Tease and Teach program and a few other groups on kind of training people in safer, cleaning environments. Like how can we raise our standard of like clean, right?
Right.
Because this is a big issue when it comes to like health and safety of like humans are dirty, man. We know this.
This is true. And this is our future we're talking about here. Exactly.
Well, we will always have this issue, no matter what. We will always have viruses. We will always have disease. We'll always somewhat be dirty, and that's okay, because we have to coincide with everything that lives in our world. Yeah. And but we have the technology to make safer environments. We have the understanding of why these things happen, but we don't do anything about it. So that's why we die.
That's a good point, though. So it's really a priority for you to get involved in all types of things. Because I mean, you've been known for your disability charities, but is this something that's new to you, or is this something you've been doing for a couple of years now?
I always was a big firm believer of creating safer environments for people with disabilities. That's always been a goal. Because viruses, I was one of those kids that was six months out of the year with pneumonia, and almost died every year. Like just a fact.
It would really hit you.
Oh yeah, I would be in the hospital for 6 months with pneumonia, and it started with the flu and allergies, then that turned into pneumonia, and then I would spend a month battling pneumonia.
That's insane.
But that's normal to me. That's actually
Right.
it was very normal. Like
Because it happened all the time.
It happened every year.
Mm.
Every September, October, I knew I would get sick at some point, either before Halloween or after Halloween.
Right.
Always coming. So I would always prepare for it, and we'd go and treat it, and then I would get done. And
Right.
so it was very common for me to get sick and go to the hospital with a flu-like virus, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And this is very common for a lot of people with disabilities when it comes to physical, and internal disabilities.
Is it because there's a lower immune system? Is that part of why?
Not so much lower immune system, but yes, that is a factor. Weaker lungs, just more susceptible.
Yeah.
I was always allergies, man.
Yeah.
Living in like Texas, Louisiana, even California, you have the Santa Ana winds.
Right.
But like when I lived in Texas, the cedar here would always get me.
Right.
So
That's insane.
It was always something.
I mean, out here it's the same, and I'm in Western Canada, so we have a lot of prairies and stuff, and I get rocked too with those allergies. I mean, so how about during the pandemic? Have you been sick at all since the COVID lockdown started?
No.
No. See, that's interesting.
Like, it's funny because, people are more aware of safety and health and cleaning practices of that nature. I think, I went to Austin a couple of weeks ago or a month ago, and my allergies are getting me.
Right.
But that was it. And you can't really fix allergies,
It's a lot better than being hospitalized.
Yeah, well, that was only for I was from 4 to 9.
Okay.
Those were my weak, long years.
Right. Okay. That's still a pretty long stretch, though. I mean, that must have been, quite an issue for the family.
It was, but I think mostly my family was all in medical care and home health and tough old bastards. So it was kind of like, you're getting better. Don't worry.
Right. You'll get better, all right.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Exactly.
So you grew up in Jackson?
So I'm adopted.
Right.
So I was born in Jackson, Mississippi. But that's about it of my Mississippi life. I grew up really between Louisiana and Texas. My parents divorced when I was about 2 months old. And I split my time between my grandparents on my father's side and my mom and my grandparents on that side, which was 1 Louisiana and 2 Texas. So
interesting mix.
Exactly. So when it comes to the South, it's the best of both worlds,
Exactly. So, I mean, what was your childhood like, and sort of at what age did the CP sort of start coming in? Was it at a really early age?
Yeah. So I don't know if you know a lot about cerebral palsy.
Not a whole lot.
Okay. I'll give you some information about it. So, cerebral palsy is most commonly caused at childbirth, or really towards the end of the developmental phase in the womb, where oxygen is starting to be introduced in different levels to the body and into the brain. So when you're born, right, and your body starts functioning off of this oxygen, not the red blood cell oxygen. And so what happens sometimes is, as you're being born, not enough oxygen is introduced to the brain, or the umbilical cord will wrap around the throat, or some form of trauma at birth.
Okay, right.
So this is really more or less a traumatic, brain injury. It's not really that, but the best way to kind of understand it's that.
Yeah.
So as you're born, oxygen is rushed to the brain, right? It's that spark, and that's why they make the baby cry. It's like, if the baby doesn't cry, they're concerned, because they're like, oh, he's not inhaling enough oxygen.
Right.
So in my case, my mother was left in labor for 6 days, and and they were about to lose us, and the umbilical cord wrapped around my throat, and they're like, "Oh, she has insurance. We have to save her."
Oh, good old healthcare, eh? Or lack thereof.
USA.
Yeah, USA.
But I mean, this is actually very common. And I say very, but it happens.
More common than people would think, right?
More common than people would think. And this isn't just in the US. This is globally. This is something that happens everywhere, in different capacities. So they save us, and because I'm a closed adoption, my birth family, which my mom and my dad, they didn't have this information.
Okay.
So for the first year of my life, my mom was like, he's not walking, like he's not crawling right. He's not moving right. There's something there. And they took me to many different doctors, and they're like, can you figure out why he's kind of like this? And they're like, oh, he'll grow out of it. It's just how he's moving. And
they didn't realize you had CP, the doctors.
The doctors. Well, and I would pass all the tests they would give me.
Okay.
So it wasn't like I would just hold things different. So it primarily affects my left side.
Okay.
So like my hand, like I have to like really think. So
to get that open?
Yeah.
Okay.
So naturally it wants to curl. So think of it kind of like a stroke almost, where there's parts of my brain that just don't communicate to the body. So I have these dead spots, and I say dead spots because they're technically not dead, but they just don't have oxygen. They've never been activated in my body because of just however the oxygen settled in the brain. So it takes a lot longer for the neuron to get to here to then go to here. And what will happen is it loses communication through the body. So sometimes there's like a 3-second delay in what I am thinking to what I am saying to you.
Wow, that's fascinating.
It's a process.
Right.
But my mom took me all over. They're like, we know there's something there, right? And the doctor said, yeah, he has something, but we don't know what it is. And doctors
you were
all
passing
over the
tests.
nation. Correct. And one day, I was around 3 years old. My grandmother from Louisiana, every so many years, she would trade in her Cadillac for the new model. And this was before the caddies of today. So you think of grandma's caddy.
Okay, a grandma caddy. It's coming to me now.
Grandma caddy. You remember those with the big trunk and the short stubby? Yeah.
I've seen it in pictures.
Yeah, great cars, very comfortable.
Yeah.
But every year she would, or every so many models, she would trade in her car. And one of the gentlemen that she would deal with happened to be a Shriner. I don't know if you know
what
about
does that
the Shriner.
mean?
So, the Masonic Lodge, do you know what the Masonry is?
Yeah, I've heard of that,
So, there are many degrees to Masonry. It's kind of, to a degree, like a fraternity of philanthropists.
Right.
That all work together in different communities and help communities and grow in businesses and all business owners. And one of the degrees that you can go for in the Masonic Lodge is a Shriner, which their sole focus is the well-being of children.
Okay.
So they've been around since the early 1900s. Mostly, like, a lot of them were clowns, and would visit like sick hospitals. And the Shriners were founded in 1920 to combat polio. Polio was a really big issue then, and it still is today. But we have more practices to help. But the Shriners realized that this was a really big issue, and it was affecting many children. So they created this division focusing on doctors and nurses and healing kids. So this is a children's hospital. Now they focus on burns, amputees, cerebral palsy, everything you could think of when it comes to medical care for a child, and
Right.
it's zero expense to the families. There's one in Canada. They're all over the world. But this gentleman, I was like, well, I'm a Shriner, and by looking at him, he looks like he has cerebral palsy. And my grandmother was like, oh, what's that? Tell me some more about it. And he goes, well, you should really go up. And we were living in Lafayette, Louisiana, and the nearest Shriners was Shreveport, Louisiana.
How far was that roughly?
5 hours, 6 hours.
Good drive.
Depending on who's driving.
Yeah.
But I had cousins up in Shreveport and Lafayette, so it was a quick drive to us. We had a farm kind of in that way too, so we're always used to driving. And then being family, Louisiana, Texas, always driving across. So
sure,
a 12-hour drive to me is nothing.
That's nothing.
Nothing. So he was like, hey, you should really make an appointment at this Shriners, and if anything, nothing more will happen, like you can't not do anymore. So
right.
We make the appointment, and within the first hour of being seen by a doctor, I'm already diagnosed and immediately started treatment.
Wow.
And that treatment was physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, and casting and braces. So from about 3 to 13, I would spend 6 months out of the year in casts.
So on your arms and legs?
Mostly my legs, just my legs.
Okay.
For the most part with my hands, I would do a lot of fishing and outdoor stuff and farm stuff, because my family were very big in the outdoors.
Right.
So when it came to the dexterity, I was always using my hands.
A lot of kayaking, maybe.
not so much kayaking, we got alligators.
Yeah, that's true. I'm thinking Canada. I got to come back to Texas here.
Yeah. Think about deep south.
Yes.
But a lot of crabbing, a lot of pulling ropes.
Yeah, that makes sense.
A lot of pulling out potatoes, a lot of gardening. But primarily it was my legs. What they could say, oh, he's an extreme toe walker. So you have your foot, right? That's a bad example, but so my foot, instead of would been that way, my foot would have been straight up and down.
Oh.
So I would walk like that. So
right.
What they would have to do is they would have to bend my heel cords to get in the right structure so I could actually use my feet properly. Which are very simple methods, which is primarily feet binding.
Okay.
And so I did feet binding for 10 years, and
wow.
And you never stop doing therapy.
Really?
This is a big thing that people don't realize, and this isn't just for people with cerebral palsy or any type of physical disability. This is even for you. If you hurt your shoulder, if you have a bad whatever, never stop your therapy. Just learn how to incorporate it into your daily life, because we all need it. Our bodies aren't in the best shape, and as you can see with COVID, it's only really affecting a lot of people with pre-existing conditions.
Yeah.
And that's because of just bad eating, bad postures, bad internal structure. So it's so important to make sure all of our organs and our body is in the alignment so our body can function properly. And to do that, you need therapy.
You so do. And health and nutrition is such a big part of it too that is, often not really discussed as much as it should be.
No, it's not. But people take it for granted. Like, oh, I could run a mile. Well, that's cool that you could run a mile. Are you properly running a mile?
Right. And are you maintaining that?
Correct.
Wow. Let me ask you this. I mean, when you started doing intensive filming, the likes of Breaking Bad, I mean, what's that like for you throughout a day? Were you working, how many hours, and were you doing therapy on set for yourself?
I mostly, when I do my therapy, I do it I do it in the shower.
Okay.
Because I use the hot water to help me relax my muscles. So I do a lot of my stretching at night or like first thing in the morning when I shower. So
Gotcha.
those kind of are my therapy caps.
Mm-hmm.
And Breaking Bad was intense. We were doing 16-hour days.
Wow.
And 6 months out of the year working sometimes 6 days a week, trying because we had to make our 6 month period.
Yeah.
And it was hard, but for the most part, I like to work. I'm one of those
Right.
people that like 16, 20-hour day, give me it.
Mm.
I'll take it. Is it physically exhausting? Yes. But again, though, if you love what you do, it's not work, right?
No, and I mean, one of the greatest television shows to ever grace the screen. I mean, obviously you were doing acting before that. You had some sort of smaller roles, even some extra roles. What was your exposure to Breaking Bad? Was it just another casting call?
I mean, yes and no.
Okay.
I think this was the first casting call. I was like, "This is my part."
Mm.
This was the first thing when my whole team read it, when my managers and agents and my family read it, and they're like, "Oh, this is you." And
Right.
and the breakdown for Walt Jr. was dark hair, big eyebrows, and mild cerebral palsy. I'm like,
You might as
done,
well put your name on the page. I mean, it's
done.
perfect.
Yep, exactly. So, and they did.
Right.
so,
Right.
so yeah, I auditioned 5 times.
Hmm.
Four in Los Angeles and once in New Mexico. I auditioned one day in LA, and then I flew later the next day straight to New Mexico. Got in at like 6 a.m. and went straight to my casting for Vince and Brian and Anna.
Mm-hmm.
Did a test screen with them, and about 2 hours later, I was casted.
Holy
And
smokes.
it was a wild ride, man. I was 12, turning 13 during that period of time of casting to making the pilot, and I
Hmm.
was 13 to 21 when I finished the show.
Wow. I thought you were older in the show. That's interesting. I mean,
I was a bigger dude, man.
yeah. You didn't really look like a typical 13-year-old. So, I mean, so your first audition, were you just reading for casting agents or was Vince there the first time?
No, I just casting agents. Sharon Bialy and her team were there, and what was funny is she actually I remember Sharon. Someone just broke their leg
Hmm.
and had crutches,
Oh.
and I actually used their crutches in the
Oh.
scene
Wow.
because they were skiing and got injured, and it just worked out. And that was a 6 months. So I auditioned 4 times, and that took a period of like 4 months. I was the last person to be cast. I missed the
Hmm.
cast dinner, missed all the fun stuff,
Wow.
and just went straight to the set and went straight to work.
What was it like when you read with Anna and Brian for the first time? Was there an immediate chemistry there?
Yeah, I think so. It's such a long time ago,
Yeah.
but I still remember it fairly clearly, and it was it just everything about the show felt right. I don't really work on many projects, and I say this kind of insulting them, but not really, because um I've never felt something that was so perfect like Breaking Bad, like working on it. Like everything I felt was just like everything I worked on with that show just felt like, oh, yes, this is how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Like, I've worked on other projects, and like there's kind of moments where it's like, I'm like, I wish this could be better. Or I wish this
Hmm.
could be different. I wish we had more money here. I wish we
Right.
had like a different person. Like, you know what I mean? Or I just felt that I shouldn't be there. You know?
With the other
Um,
projects?
yeah. Like sometimes
Yeah.
I'm like, this isn't really right for me, or
Hmm.
and not even that it's not right for me. Just like I'm like, someone else could have been so much better than me.
Hmm.
But when it came to Breaking Bad, I was like, oh, this is where I'm supposed to be. This is the project that I'm supposed to be on.
Yeah.
And and so everything just felt like it worked in cohesivity and worked well.
Absolutely. I mean, what was your reaction in terms of the show? How successful did you anticipate it being, or was that even on your mind whatsoever?
Not even on the radar.
Right.
I really think we were just doing. I mean, yes, some people probably were like, "Yeah, this show's going to be successful,"
Hmm.
but really, my view was just like, "This is going to be a really cool show. This is going to be something that people I like this type of content. I
Yeah.
like I'm interested in the gangster vibe, in the cartel vibe, that whole like grassroots family, Scarface,
Hmm.
Magoo vibe, where it's just this world of turmoil. Um,
Yeah.
I like all that. That's just like my daily life.
In such a fascinating, fresh way, too, from the camera angles to the writing. One thing I wonder.
Everything.
Yeah, no doubt. One thing I really wonder is that, something I know about you is you really took care of your little sister throughout your upbringing, and you also had a very close relationship with your mom, with your father not as much in the picture. That's quite similar to the character of Walt Jr. Was there any method acting at all? Was there any thinking of real life?
Oh, every step of the way.
Hmm.
I mean, I don't. People use the term method. I think there are people that method is more of an extremist side to acting. That labeling.
Right.
But I believe everything in acting comes from a basis of reality. You
Hmm.
you you can't you can't always artificially create something that you've never experienced. So your body, as you act and as you perform, you draw from other memories, no matter what. And for me, that's kind of what I always do when it comes to my characters, is how or what in my life was similar or parallel to what these characters are going through, and utilizing that to help create a more well-rounded character.
Yeah. So that being said, was it tough for you day after day to be rehashing this, or is that just the job?
Man, this job is best therapy that you could ever have.
Right. I mean, not a bad job.
No, not a bad job. No, and I'm not a big fan of. I escape from my own reality every once in a while through video games and animes and non-fictional stuff.
Hmm.
So I have my own process to handle that, but at the same time, uh, you can't change who you are. You can't change what you experienced, and I
Hmm.
don't think that you should ever try to bury or disvalue whatever you may have gone through in your life,
Right.
um, because it makes you who you are, and that's something
Yeah.
that I think that people have a hard time facing who they actually are,
Hmm.
and you should embrace it. You shouldn't try to be someone different. You should be who you are, because at the end of the day, that's who you are.
Yeah.
And
Every little piece of it, for good or
you
for
should love
bad, it
it.
contributes to you. Yeah.
You should love it. You should love it, for better or worse. You should love who you are and what you experience, even if it hurts you.
I would agree with that. Thinking about your relationship with Bryan Cranston, so many years playing his son and, with Anna Gunn, is there some sort of like family type feeling with them that resonates after the project after so long?
Very, very much so.
Yeah.
There's definitely a lot of family dynamics. When you work with a group so closely for so many years, you do kind of have that family dynamic par, and
Yeah.
that respect. And that's the thing, is I respect them as much as I respect my mom and my father.
Hmm.
You know, and same with my uncles and Dean, and it's kind of that same respect when it comes to my family tree. You kind of have that heritage in that. So
Yeah. I love those scenes you did with Dean too. I mean, the Uncle Hank relationship was always, I mean, such a special one. I mean, who was your favorite character on the show that wasn't your own?
I really liked Aaron's
Yeah.
character, Jesse. I thought he was great, but Heisenberg, man,
Yep.
Heisenberg was where it's at, you know.
The
Can't
OG.
miss. The OG, the real gangster right there.
That's it. You know, I always see in Breaking Bad videos on YouTube, people put comments on almost every video saying, "This is the moment Walt became Heisenberg." Do you think there is a moment, or do you think it was just all a progression?
I think there's moments. I think it's kind of these fragments and cracks of who Walter White is and was to who he became as Heisenberg. It's baby steps, you know. Scarface wasn't always Scarface until he made those decisions, you know. And I think the same thing with Walter White until when he started murdering, when he started lying and cheating, and when he really started lying to his family. To me, that's kind of where he's like he's choosing this other person to be him, you know. That's when, to me, he started becoming Heisenberg, and until when he goes like, "I am the danger," that's one of those things where it's like, oh, that he's no longer Walter White. That's a whole new person. That's a whole new mindset, and that's where he lost his humanity, to me.
Yeah, what a moment. You know, one of my other standout scenes is when you go over to the apartment and you catch him off the sleeping pills or the prescription pills, and he's crying, and you have the heart to heart. I mean, how long would a scene like that take when there's like a long monologue like that?
Quite a few hours, man.
Really?
It's a minute. I mean, because you're talking angles and set changes and stuff like that, and from progression. Because that day we shot that scene in reverse. Actually, we shot when the next morning he wakes up. We shot all that in the morning that day, and then we shot the end of the night, where he sees Walt. And they kind of have that later in the evening.
Wow.
But that's like a 5-hour scene, 6-hour scene when it comes to setups and close-ups and angles and everything. It's a good minute. And we had a crew of 500
wow.
of the best men and women in the business. And a lot of those people still work on Better Call Saul and worked on El Camino. So it really was a family dynamic set, and everyone was always hands on deck. But those are some of my favorite scenes when it's kind of that dark and brooding and very direct and forward. Those are the best scenes that you could ever do as an actor.
That's so incredible. You know, before we wrap it up with a quick speed round of questions, I just wanted to know, it's often discussed that each Breaking Bad character has their own color. I'm just wondering, for you as an actor on the show, were features like that were sort of not spoken and more shown, was that heavily emphasized on you guys as actors? And is there any other sort of secrets that were implemented?
Not so much us as actors, but when it came to set dressing and our wardrobe team. When you walked into set deck, when you walked to the designing office of our sets and our wardrobe office, which were next to each other, everyone had a color palette. Everyone had a mood, and each episode was different to that color palette, because color is such a psychological thing when it comes to seeing something.
Yeah.
So it makes a very big difference to the environment of what you're wearing, what the environment is wearing. So that's such a very important piece. But really, that's not so much on us. We just wear the clothes.
Right, and you have your lines, right? And that's about it.
I got my lines. I wear the clothes. And really where we get to do our part is we take those lines and we put emphasis behind them and utilize them in a way that makes expands that character. And if we expand too much, they say turn it down. And if we expand too little, they say turn it up.
Right.
But really, that's our piece was really just taking what they gave us and utilizing it to the fullest of that ability.
I love that so much. RJ, this has been such a pleasure. To wrap up each interview, we just have a speed round of a couple questions that I'll give to you. The first one is, one musical artist you wish you saw live at the height of their career.
Johnny Cash.
Johnny Cash. Very good. You could switch ability with any entertainer, athlete for one day. Who would it be?
Oof. Like ability or
yeah, like you could play guitar like Van Halen type of thing.
Oh yeah. Oh man. Kerry King from Slayer, man. That would be wild.
You like Slayer?
I do. I've seen some of their shows. I've actually met Kerry King many a times and had some tequila with him.
Nice. That's so cool. I got to photograph Slayer actually when concerts were still existing, and one of the most electrifying things I've ever seen. I'm surprised I can still hear.
Where at? Where was it?
Here in Edmonton, Canada.
Cool.
They like to come out here, yeah. One moment that you felt starstruck.
I met Simon Pegg. He was doing. Do you remember the movie he did, Run Fat Boy Run?
I remember that, yeah.
So I met him at the after party, and he spilled some beer on me, and I was like, oh my god, this is awesome.
Best beer I've ever had spilt on me.
Best beer I ever had spilt on me. I was starstruck. I was like just in awe.
That's too good. Final question for you, RJ. A young RJ Mitte walks in the room right now, and he's looking for some advice. What would you tell him?
Get out.
Get out.
Run.
Don't do whatever you're about to do. No.
Don't do it. Massive mistake.
Well, it seems to have worked out damn good.
Depends on the day.
Depends on the day. Listen, RJ, thank you so much for your time, my man. Is there anything else you wanted to add for the people out there?
Just thank you for having me on the show, and thank you for everyone's listening, for their support, and keep an eye out for future projects. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram and all that. It's just my name. But thank you all so much for the support and loving the show. We really appreciate it. So
definitely. And thanks for everything that you do for charity and otherwise, and definitely stay safe out there.
I'll do our best. Have a good day.
And there you have it. My exclusive podcast with RJ Mitte of Breaking Bad and much more. I want to thank RJ for taking the time to share some of his insights and experiences with me. And I want to thank you for listening. I certainly hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please hit that subscribe button wherever you tuned into this, be it Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher Radio, and of course YouTube. Smash that subscribe button, leave a like, and of course a comment. I want to know what you guys think of the content that's been coming out. And let me know who you want to see on the podcast next. I have a wide variety of people that I want to talk to. I don't cap it at any genre of music. I don't even cap it at entertainment. Just let me know who you want me to talk to. And if I see the response is good in the comments, I'll try to make it happen. And of course, follow me on social media for updates about myself and the podcast at Cassius Morris and at Cassius Show. That's on all social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok. Thanks so much for tuning into this episode of the podcast. Until next time, this is Cassius Morris saying, rock on.